In the year 2050, a mysterious event occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant that altered the course of human history forever. The catastrophic explosion in 1986 had left a ghostly scar on the land, a 30-kilometer exclusion zone surrounding the plant where nature reclaimed what humanity had forsaken. But now, more than half a century later, new horrors were awakening in the heart of the Chernobyl disaster. Despite years of scientific monitoring, the exclusion zone had never been fully understood. Unexplainable radiation spikes, strange electromagnetic bursts, and sightings of odd phenomena kept appearing in reports. Most were dismissed as conspiracy theories or natural anomalies, but whispers persisted about something much darker. Some said that Chernobyl wasn't just a relic of a nuclear disaster, it was becoming a breeding ground for something far more dangerous. Chapter 1. The Anomaly. A team of elite scientists, under the direction of Dr. Elena Volkova, had been dispatched to investigate the latest anomalies. Equipped with cutting-edge technology, designed to withstand radiation far worse than what was expected in the zone, their task was clear: locate the source of these anomalies and assess the risk. The world's governments had long kept an eye on Chernobyl, but with the recent spikes in unexplained activity, concern had grown. Unchecked, these anomalies could represent a threat far beyond the abandoned reactor. The team of 4 moved cautiously through the empty streets of Pripyat, the closest city to the reactor. It was eerily silent, the overgrown streets lined with crumbling apartment buildings, schools, and playgrounds, abandoned since 1986. But today, the air felt different. It was thicker, more oppressive, as if the zone itself was alive and waiting. "This place always creeps me out," Yuri, the youngest scientist, muttered as he checked the radiation meter. The device was fluctuating wildly, sending erratic readings. "It should creep you out," Gregor, the team's engineer, replied as he adjusted his visor. "We're standing in one of the most radioactive places on Earth. But this doesn't look like normal radiation." Elena, silent at the front of the group, raised a hand to stop them. She was a seasoned veteran, with over a decade of experience studying radiation, but even she was unnerved by what they were seeing. Her dark brown eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the surroundings. The Geiger counters were not acting like they should. The radiation levels were spiking in strange, localized areas, and as they moved, the spikes seemed to follow a pattern, almost as if they were being funneled toward something. "We're getting closer to the source," Elena finally said, her voice low. "Stay sharp. If the readings are correct, we're dealing with something far beyond a simple radiation leak." They had mapped out an old apartment complex as their first point of investigation. The building had once housed hundreds of workers from the nearby plant, but now it stood as a skeleton of its former self, overgrown with moss and vines. Broken windows and rusted metal doors groaned in the wind, and faded Soviet propaganda posters still clung to the walls. Inside, the air was thick with dust. The floors creaked underfoot, and the faint drip of water echoed through the hallways. The team moved cautiously, their headlamps cutting through the darkness. Time seemed to have stopped here. A child's toy sat forgotten in the corner of the room. Papers littered the floors, and calendars still showed the fateful year of 1986. "Strange," Elena muttered, as she bent down to examine the toy. A small, stuffed bear. There was no dust on it. In fact, it looked as if it had been placed there just hours before. As they ventured deeper into the building, the team's instruments began to pick up something more disturbing than radiation spikes. The air hummed with a low, vibrating frequency that made their skin crawl. At first, they thought it was their equipment malfunctioning, but soon it became clear. This hum was coming from somewhere deeper underground. "We need to get to the basement," Elena ordered. "Whatever's causing these anomalies, it's below us." Chapter 2. Beneath the Surface. The team descended into the basement, their breaths echoing in the narrow stairwell. The lower they went, the stronger the hum became. And then, without warning, all of their equipment malfunctioned at once. The lights flickered, the radiation meters spiked off the charts, and the air seemed to warp around them. They were not alone. As the last set of stairs gave way to a vast, open chamber, the sight before them stopped them cold. In the center of the room was a shimmering anomaly, a pulsating mass of energy swirling in unnatural colors of green and blue. It looked as though a tear had formed in the fabric of reality itself. Strange symbols, written in a language no one could recognize, floated in the air around it, and the energy crackled with such intensity that the hair on their skin stood up. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She had read about anomalies like this before, but never had she seen one with her own eyes. This was beyond science, beyond anything they had ever been prepared for. What is it? Yuri's voice shook as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Elena couldn't answer. She was too transfixed by the anomaly. Something deep within her told her that this was no natural occurrence. The anomaly was somehow linked to the disaster of 1986, perhaps a consequence of the explosion that had not been fully understood. But more than that, she had the growing feeling that this tear in reality was alive, and it was watching them. Suddenly, the room began to shake. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and cracks snaked up the walls. Something was coming. From the darkness of the fissures, shapes began to emerge. Shadowy figures, humanoid in form but distorted, as if they were being pulled and twisted by unseen forces. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their bodies seemed to shimmer and flicker as if they were caught between two worlds. "Run!" Gregor screamed as the first creature lunged toward them. It moved with terrifying speed, its body contorting in impossible ways. The team scattered, their panic overriding any sense of order. Gregor was the first to fall, caught in the grasp of one of the creatures. It let out a deep, guttural roar as it dragged him into the anomaly, his screams disappearing with him into the void. Elena ran, her mind racing. She couldn't let this happen, not again, not after everything she'd worked for. But the creatures were relentless. They were manifestations of the anomaly, born of the energy that was warping the space around them. As she reached the stairs, another tremor hit, and the ceiling began to collapse. Chunks of debris rained down, separating Elena from the others. She screamed their names, but no one answered. The only sound was the growl of the creatures and the crackling energy of the anomaly. In a desperate attempt to escape, Elena charged through the rubble and back into the building above. She could feel the ground shaking beneath her, the very fabric of reality unraveling. This was no ordinary radiation leak. Something had been unleashed, something far more powerful than a nuclear reactor could ever produce. Outside, the world had changed. Chapter 3, The Zone Awakens. The once familiar landscape of Pripyat was now a twisted nightmare. The anomaly was spreading, and with it came chaos. The skies above were dark with swirling clouds of energy, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with unnatural light. Strange creatures roamed the streets, their twisted forms barely recognizable as anything human. Elena stumbled through the chaos, her mind racing with the horror of what she had seen. There was no way to contact the outside world. The anomaly's electromagnetic interference had cut them off completely. They were trapped. But even as she fled, a part of her knew she couldn't leave. This was bigger than just her survival. Whatever had been unleashed here had the potential to consume the entire planet if left unchecked. And she was the only one who had seen it firsthand. As she reached the edge of the city, she stopped short. A shimmering barrier stood in her way, pulsating with the same energy as the anomaly. It crackled and hissed as if alive, preventing any escape. She was sealed inside. Desperate, she turned back to the city. The creatures were still out there, hunting, but now, something else was stirring. Something far worse than the shadowy figures she had encountered below. The air itself seemed to be whispering, voices from another dimension, calling her name. Elena clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had to find a way to stop this, to understand what the anomaly truly was. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized the terrifying truth. This was not just a tear in reality. It was a door, and something was trying to come through. To be continued.